Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Toejam Earl Panic on Funkotron. In the last part we finished off level 3 and now we're in level 4, Snowy Streets. You know, it's very funny that I mentioned last time that I think that was the only video that had one level in it, period. This is another one level video. While Snowy Street isn't as dense with Earthlings as the previous level was, there's only about 17 Earthlings here as opposed to over 40 in the previous level. It makes up for it by having a bit more back and forth platforming on top of being an ice gimmick level. And the way this game does ice gimmicks is twofold. For one thing, there is occasionally some frozen over water you can walk on top of that you can slip and slide over a little bit. It's the usual kind of slippery ice controls there. But in most cases, what it impacts is slopes. If you're on a snow-based level like this and you go down a large hill, and you even remotely touch down at all, Toejam and Earl will start sliding down that hill. In most cases, your momentum will just continue building as well, and at the end of most hills, there'll be a little ramp up that you can use to vault high up into the air. With that said, in most cases, you don't want to slide all the way down the hill. There's usually Earthlings hidden in plants along the way, or other interactables along the way you want to use up to actively find your objectives in the main stage, so don't just go all willy-nilly. Thankfully, should you slide past a Earthling in question, you're never out of luck. For one thing, you can stop sliding by just jumping straight up and then you'll land on the floor as normal. Just be careful about not touching down on the D-pad again for the next little bit. And for another thing, Panic on Funkotron's level design is honestly very well laid out to the point of there's never really a dead game state that you force yourself into by missing an Earthling here or there. There's always either way you can just walk backwards in the stage, jump backwards in the stage, or in the case a cliff is too high, either the sponge moss will be there for you to jump off of, or there will be a parking meter or button outright you can interact with that'll teleport you to a slightly earlier chunk of the stage that you can then continue walking back to the left or right on, depending on what the level design is like in that specific section. So at this point, I'm actively gotten enough funk and coins built up through doing the Hyperfunk Zone's first section over and over again that I'm going to dedicate myself to actively going through these levels at large. Like I mentioned back in part 1, in the Hyperfunk Zones, you are automatically moving to the right, gaining speed as you go, especially if you hit a lightning bolt, which will speed you up tremendously. Your only active control is to enter the Funk Technique's teleportation state, and you use that to clip through these little seaweed barriers, because those will slow you down otherwise. And that's important because we need to keep our timer in the top right as full as we can, either by getting through these sections quickly or picking up the clock pickups along the way. With that said, the Hyperfunk Zones, as you go through them, are a bunch of trial and error alongside memorization and reaction. Touching any of the wormholes that send you back to standard Funkotron mean you've technically failed the Hyperfunk Zone in question. In order to complete the Hyperfunk Zone period, you need to make it all the way to the end of the red screen and let it fade to black like that. What's up, TJ? What's up, Luna? Suppose you've heard the news, huh? What news? About the great Funkopotamus. The Funka who? You know, the great Funkopotamus, the Grandmaster of Funkitude, his majestic funkness, the source of all Funkitude on Funkotron. Oh, that Funkopotamus. Well, he's gone and he's taken the funk with him. Oh, it's terrible. What will we do? Don't worry, Bluna, we'll think of something. The reason we actively want to get to the end of the Hyperfunk Zone stages is that by completing a Hyperfunk Zone 3 times, you get taken to a new map the next time you enter a Hyperfunk Zone. Complete that one 3 times, we get taken to a third one. By completing the third layout of the Hyperfunk Zone 3 separate times, we're actively going to be given a very nice reward that'll make the rest of the game a comparative breeze. I say comparative because, not for nothing, Panic on Funkotron isn't exactly a hard game. Depending on your mindset, it can definitely be a bit tedious though. With that said, like I mentioned with certain enemies like the construction worker and the like, it is pretty easy to take a lot of damage in this game, but it's also just as easy to get extra lives because you get another one every 10,000 up to a certain point, and I think after you lose that certain point, they will gain another at the next 10,000. But also, there are healing items placed all over the goddamn place in this game. With that said, not for nothing, this game is still decently generous. Like I mentioned, you get a password every 2 levels or so usually. But even then, on top of that, if you lose all of your extra lives, you do have 3 continues on top of that to keep you going in the game longer. If memory serves, continues in this game start you back at the beginning of the level you used one in, meaning you have whatever lives you earn along the way and 3 continues on you, and most times to reach your next password. In the case that you get a true game over and get sent back to the title screen, you at least still have a password to lean back on, which does mean you might need to redo a level or 2 here and again depending on your performance, but I'd prefer that to totally starting over like many other games released during this time period made you do. Mind you, I'd rather infinite continuous period, but that's a separate topic at that point. Also, because I haven't mentioned it yet outright, you might have noticed the occasional little flag I cross by. Those are outright checkpoints. A red checkpoint hasn't been marked yet, a blue one has been. They're a bit harder to find earlier on, but by late game, there's actively several per level, sometimes in the same room. So in the case you actively die, there's actively not too much of a backtrack in most cases. Most cases being the key word there. For right now, let's actively take a look back at the manual, because it's worth noting that pretty much all of Toejam and Earl's key friend Funkotronians do have outright bios in the manual. For instance, Peebo. Peebo is probably Toejam and Earl's best friend. He giggles a lot, which usually gets TJ and Earl laughing, and he always gets the hiccups whenever he's nervous. Peebo can be most often found hiding from Bluna, who has a crush on him, and is always trying to give him a hug. Unfortunately, his hiccups generally give him away pretty quickly. Meanwhile, Lawanda is sexy and flirtatious. That's an intro. She makes both Toejam and Earl get all tongue-tied. She's good friends with Charla and is completely uninterested in Smoot. Lawanda is quite smart and tends to be the leader whenever there's a crisis. She loves to dance more than anything in the world, but often finds herself having to babysit her younger twin brothers, Chester and Lester. Oh god, that's right. Level 4 introduces my active least favorite enemy in the game, the cow ghosts. The thing that's really annoying about them, for one thing, they're the only enemy that can just clip themselves into walls, making them unable to be reached, period, for a good period of time. And for another, their attack range is just getting within a certain range of you. If that happens, they'll just suck themselves into you, make you go move several times, and then vibrate your body, doing like maybe a third or a fourth of your health. It's really annoying. The thing that makes them otherwise annoying is not only can they walk through walls like I mentioned, they're also pretty much completely invisible like the boogeymen, unless they just fade in here and again to say hello. You can generally hear when one's near you, though, because there is a slight mooing sound they make, similarly to the little girl enemies alongside some others who'll be like nya 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 when they're hiding away in some part of the background. Which is a nice little warning, but sometimes it happens a little too late. Thankfully, while they're invisible like with the boogeymen, you can actively see them at any time by just using a funk scan. Yo, TJ, what's up, Smoot? You are one handsome fellow. Aw, gee, thanks. Actually, I was referring to that dashing fellow in the mirror, i.e. moi. Oh. Say, Smoot, do you know about the great Funkopotamus? Of course, he's a personal friend of mine. I call him Lamont. Oh, well, do you know where he is? Certainly. Well, he's hiding from the Earthlings. He's very sensitive. Now, if you'll excuse me, I must do my hair. Okay, bye. I don't like Smoot. I guess because he just showed up, we can read Smoot's bio. Despite what Charla thinks, Smoot doesn't have the hots for Lawanda. Smoot, in fact, has only ever been in love with one Funkotronian, and that's himself. Smoot just adores himself. His favorite activities include looking in the mirror, combing his hair, and talking about himself. Smoot knows that it's his destiny to be a great movie star. Ugh. Next up, let's read Trixie's bio. The players who made it to the end of Toejam and Earl 1 may remember Trixie. No one really knows who she is, although she is occasionally referred to by some Funkotronians as the mysterious and beautiful spirit goddess of joyous funk. More often than not, though, they just call her Trix. Needless to say, TJ and Earl are both quite taken with her. Sometimes you may be clever or lucky enough to find one of Trixie's hidden spots, like the one, for example, on the platform Danger Alley. Oops, I hope I didn't give anything away. When you find one of these spots, Trixie will bestow Toejam and Earl a special power that will last the rest of the level. I remember hearing there was some rumor for a good while there, or something in the game's code as well, where there was maybe something intended at one point where if you found every Trixie power-up spot, you would get another power-up permanently through the rest of the game too. But seemingly that was just never implemented. Next up, let's learn about Bluna. Bluna is overweight and extremely unself-conscious about it. She absolutely loves food, and because of this, she and Earl have a special friendship. Bluna tends to be very philosophical about food, and Earl thinks she is very wise. Bluna has the hots for Peebo and is always trying to feed him candy bars. Like Peebo, she laughs and giggles a lot. And we're about to meet our next character actively right over this hill. Meet my favorite character in the game.
What's up, Toejam?
Hi, Otis.
I'm worried about Charla. She's pretty upset.
Why?
I'm not sure she won't stop crying.
Where is she?
She's up on the top platform. Maybe you could cheer her up a little.
No problem. As for Otis's bio, old Otis likes to do two things. He likes to garden, and he likes to tell long stories. Unfortunately, TJ and Earl and their other friends usually don't have the patience to get all the way through one of Otis's stories, so he is forever getting interrupted by them. Otis is a great source of Funkotronian tall tales and legends. Now, while we're on our way actively to go meet with Charla, I might as well mention, you've seen me get on top of these pink bubbles pretty often in this level. That is a mechanic I did not like as a kid, but I'm generally fine with now. Namely, they're both a conveyance platform, but also a balancing game. Whenever you're on top of one of them, Toejam and Earl are constantly fighting to regain their balance. Namely, whenever they start sliding to the left, you need to tap right on the D-pad. Whenever they start sliding right, tap left on the D-pad. Sounds pretty simple, but as a kid, I constantly overcomplicated it by holding that direction, and I just started accelerating way too fast in either direction. Tap the D-pad whenever you're on one of the bubbles, it's much easier to deal with. What's up, TJ? Yo, Charla. What's wrong, Charla? It's the great Funkopotamus. He's not coming back, and Funkotron will lose all its funk. You mean Lamont? Yeah, he said he's never coming out. Coming out from where? He's hiding in the funk dimension. Cheer up, Charla. I'm gonna get him out. You are? How? Well, I have a clever plan. And we will not elaborate on that any further for the moment. The thing to note about the bubbles, though, you do get a nice audio warning when you're about to fall off because Toejam and Earl do kind of go, whoa! But also, whenever a bubble starts turning transparent, that means it's reached the end of its movement area, and thus it's about to pop. So just jump off of it at that point. Usually the next bubble or the platform that you need to land on is in sight at that point. But worth noting, while it might not immediately come to mind and might not even look like it, you can still do the high jump off of a bubble. So at all times you're on a bubble, hold down the D-pad just in case to get some extra air that might come in handy. Hell, they even kind of soft tutorialized that in this very stage. Namely, at the very start of the stage, I got on a bubble that was in a pit I fell down intentionally to get some bonuses, right? The bubble that takes you up out of that pit pops at just a high enough point where if you're not doing a high jump, I don't think it's actively possible to make it out of that pit. So be careful. Thankfully, whenever you see a bubble like that, it will respawn after a few moments, even if it's respawning back at the ground. Like I said, there's basically no one and done platforming challenges or things like that in this game. The only things you can miss out on are the points that come out of bushes or that spawn in, because if a present falls off screen, you're just not getting that on that life at the very least. Because we just met her, let's also read Charla's bio. Charla is a manic depressive. She seems to always be having mood swings where one moment she's crying and the next she's grinning and laughing. In spite of the fact that she is very insecure, Charla has a great singing voice and can really belt them out when she lets loose. Charla is good friends with Lawanda, but is jealous of her because she thinks that Smoot, whom she likes, has the hots for Lawanda, and not her like we mentioned earlier. Oh, how wrong she is, and she needs to have better standards, honestly. Also, because we're seeing this in full speed, I believe this is the second variant of the Hyperfunk zones now, and as you go through the higher variants, the rewards and the presents actively do get better and better when it comes to the point values of the funk you can get out of it, but also they just generally get harder to get extra time in and reach the end, and the third Hyperfunk zone in specific is a goddamn nightmare. I know there's some people out there that have 100%ed the Hyperfunk zones and done them perfectly, getting every chest along the way. I have maybe done that for the first Hyperfunk zone once when I was like 9, and we'll probably never do that again because I just do not care enough to do that. While we approach the end of the level, there is one more character bio we can read at this point, and that's namely for Chester and Lester, the younger siblings we brought up earlier. They were the little yellow guy we met back, I think, in level 2? These are the Publey twins, the younger brothers of Lawanda Publey. The strange thing about Chester and Lester is that they are never seen together, and no one is sure whether there are really two of them, or whether it's just one kid pretending to be twins. It's impossible to get their names right, no matter who you guess, it's always the other one. There is actually still one more character bio to read, but I'm going to save that for when we meet that character at the very start of the next level, if memory serves. Hey TJ! Yo Peebo! Did you catch all the Earthlings yet? Well, almost. You suppose after they're gone, the Funkopotamus will come back out of the funk dimension? Yeah. You know, I bet you could get him to come out if you offered him some of his favorite stuff. Like what? I don't know. I bet Lawanda might know. Good information. I guess I'll keep that in mind for later. And trust me, you do want to keep that in mind for later, because that is actually technically how we get the best ending. More on that later, though. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 4, we're gonna tackle level 5 and beyond, where the game's level design starts getting a bit more complicated to begin with, but it's also where the levels start containing much more important secrets. See you guys then.